When I was 7 years old.
6 years old.
4 years old.
I was 9 and my brother was 6.
When I was in 3rd grade.
I was 9 years old.
I was 8.
I think I was about 6 years old.
My biological father. My mother.
My dad.
My mother.
My father.
My father.
My mother.
My mother.
Our father.
My father.
Picked me up one weekend and didn't bring me back.
I first heard the term parental abduction in August of 2001, and I had never heard the term before. I caught the tail end of a radio program, so I didn't hear the explanation of what it meant. I had a sneaking suspicion that I knew. I went home and I typed it into a search engine. And I honestly was expecting to get no matches found. There were something like 30,000 hits.
I was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. An American mom, an Argentine dad. Had polio when I was 3 years old, but otherwise had a very normal, routine childhood until I was 6 years old.
When I was 7 years old, my mother was in a very horrible car accident, and she couldn't take care of us. She could barely walk. She chose to send me and my sister to other family members. She sent me to my father, my sister to my uncle, and we were only supposed to be gone for 3 weeks. My sister came back after 3 weeks, but I didn't.
We went for a normal weekend visitation with our father, but instead of coming back home after the weekend, we just kept driving.
I was abducted at 4 years old, and the only childhood I originally knew was as Heather Ann Brown. That's who I grew up as with my mother, so that's who I thought I was until I was 12.
There's an underestimation in society of the lasting results and implications of children being abducted by their parents.
Because you're with a parent.
With a parent.
With a parent. You're with a parent.
If a child is with a parent.
That's not kidnapping.
How bad can it be? You're not being traumatized.
It can't be that bad.
Can't be that terrible.
They're okay.
And that's just simply not the truth.
Somewhere along the way, my own father told us that my mother had died.
My father had said that my mother didn't want me.
Your mother doesn't want you anymore. She gave you to me, and we're going to Canada to start a new life.
She told me that my father and my grandparents, who I really adored, had all been killed in a horrible traffic accident, and she pretended to be terribly upset about it and said that because of that there was really nothing to go home to.
It was a lie from him, but for me, he's my father, so that's the reality.
There's this dependence that happens when you're abducted by a parent. You're suddenly taken from having a number of people in your life who you're familiar with, aunts, uncles, grandparents, the other parent possibly, school friends, teachers, to having only one person to depend on.
I had access to no other family members. I never stayed in school long enough to make friends. We never got to know neighbors. It was a life of hiding.
He turned me into a boy, so I wasn't very happy. He made me dress and act like a boy. I was not allowed to play outside. I was not allowed to be a normal child.
It was very unnatural. I was the center of his world, and he was the center of mine. I mean, I clearly depended on him, but it was almost a role reversal, that I wasn't just a child.
You know, your mother and your father, you're supposed to depend on them, and, you know, they're not supposed to lie to you. And she was my whole life, my whole world, and her reality became mine.
Everything changed, just night and day. Just losing identity, losing everything I'd known, school, friends, location, and not knowing who to trust. That in each location where we were going, I had no connections with other people. I really grew up a ghost.
We were with my father for about 10 months, and meanwhile my mom is back home in agony, having no idea where we are, not having any sign or hearing from us in any way. And she just worked all she could to try and find us. She tried to work with the authorities, legal authorities, things like that, but didn't get a lot of support there. It was in the 60s, and it's kind of viewed as the boys are with their dad.
My mother worked very, very hard to try and find me, and the police would not help her. No one would help her.
She ended up, along with my family, sending flyers out to nearly every school in the United States. Eventually, fortunately, one of those flyers was recognized in the principal's office of the school where my brother and I were enrolled.
FBI came to my school and took me out of class and sat me down, and there was a counselor there, 2 policemen, 2 FBI agents, and they showed me a milk carton and said, "Do you know who this girl is?" And I said, "No," and it was a picture of me, Rebecca.
Finally, she walked into my schoolroom one of the 3 days that I was forced to go to school and asked me if I wanted to go home with her, and I said yes.
And I knew that from the moment I left to go up to college, I was going to be financially independent and emotionally independent. So at that point, I had nothing to lose.
I was never really found. I finally got old enough and matured enough and understood that there were choices, and contacted my brother and my mother when I was 18.
And I just said to my mom, I'm going to go see my dad.
He dropped us off, and his girlfriend and her son were still in the car. And I still remember the song that was playing on the radio at the time. It was If You Leave Me Now, I think it's by Chicago. And it was heart-wrenching because all of a sudden he's crying, he's sad, and it's my fault. It's my fault that I've ruined this for him. They found out somehow. Now he's sad, and now I'm leaving him.
One thing that happens with reunification is that the emphasis so far in society has been on returning an abducted child to the left-behind parent, and there hasn't been much emphasis on what happens after that.
From a child's perspective, it's almost as if it's a re-abduction. We've been taken away again from another parent, and with the expectation that now we're safe, now everything's going to be okay. It's a, I like to say a return to normal, for them, and it's anything but.
I didn't trust anyone when I came back. I didn't have a school life. I tried to parent when I should have been a child because I was so used to being the responsible party in the family.
I have serious trust issues. I have, it's hard to form relationships sometimes to even, I find myself, what do they want from me? I mean, are they gonna just walk away when I tell them, what's happened to me or who I really am?
It was difficult to trust people, difficult to open yourself up, difficult to let people see who you really are.
When you have been fed lies by your parent, like your mother is dead, your father doesn't want you, and you believe those lies, it's difficult to trust yourself.
You grow up as a parentally abducted child with this incredible sense of isolation, with this sense that you're the kid with their nose up against the outside window of the candy store looking in at everyone else's family.
There was a need for peer support. There was a need for a network of people who had been through this experience to be able to come together, share our stories, and support one another.
There are 200 stranger abductions a year.
As opposed to 200,000 parental abductions.
200,000.
200,000.
200,000 children a year.
200,000 parents a year.
200,000.